There are about 500,000 health apps today, and there are over hundreds of watches and rings that are available.
How is sleep quality measured?
It's important we have at least 50% of sleep in the day cycle, which is impossible to tell without wearing a wearable. We hear from mothers that we need to monitor their children through wearables, but I don't think that's a very good idea.
What are those cases where you won't recommend these devices?
People who have mental health problems like anxiety, ADHD will only increase their anxiety and not help them.
Everyone, welcome to the podcast. I'm Raksha, a tech creator at Raksha Bytes, and I'm always excited to talk about cutting edge technology and the way it impacts our daily lives. Today, we are exploring the fascinating intersection of healthcare and wearable technology. From fitness trackers and smartwatches to cutting edge medical devices, wearables are transforming how we monitor our health and stay connected to our bodies. But with all this data at our fingertips, what do healthcare professionals think about it? I'm excited to introduce you to Dr. Samatha Tulla, who's at the forefront of next generation healthcare. Dr. Samatha, can you please give us an introduction about yourself and the areas that you work in?
Hi, Raksha. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast today. I'm Dr. Samatha Tulla. I'm an internal medicine physician. My interest is in the area of longevity medicine and more personalized medicine. So I deal with clients with chronic diseases, mostly lifestyle diseases, which are metabolic like hypertension, type 2 diabetes, cholesterol issues, or coronary artery disease, or even subset of individuals who are not having any kind of disease as such, but they're more into preventive, proactive lifestyle. So these are the different clientele that I deal with on day-to-day basis.
Wow, that's quite impressive, Samatha. So, in this episode, we would like to deep dive into the benefits, challenges, and the future of wearable technology like Fitbit, Apple Watch, Pixel Watch, and so on. So, whether you're a tech enthusiast or someone looking to better understand how wearables fit into your health journey, this episode has something for you. So, let's get right into it. Why are we so obsessed with 10,000 steps? Does it have any significance from a medical perspective?
It so happened, I remember in 1950s, Japanese, I think so, and was running a campaign for speedometer, and they had this challenge of 10,000 steps, and that's how it picked on. But definitely the steps, today the number of steps which are needed to keep us away from any kind of disease or a risk for mortality is much lower, not 10,000 anymore. It is between 7 to 8,000 steps. But otherwise, any steps of 8 to 10,000 do keep us away from risk from cancers or chronic diseases. That is the significance, yes. But I do see some people who are over enthusiastic about the steps and over anxious and concentrate on only one parameter. We can't just do that. We can't just concentrate only on step count and forego other things and not concentrate on other important aspects of health, and not going for preventive checkups, which are also crucial. It's not that you can do just keep doing 10,000 steps every single day and expect diseases are just vanishing away. So it's important to keep it interact with other important biomarkers and with preventive checks as well.
Thank you. So, do you think 10,000 steps in one shot is better or 10,000 steps distributed across the day is better?
The important point here is to keep moving throughout the day. So it's important we finish those steps throughout the day, not doing them at one go. So, because the number of studies which we now see that sedentary activity is directly linked to a number of possible chronic diseases, right? So, if you're just exercising for 1 hour in a day, and rest of the day, if you're having sedentary lifestyles, for example, you're doing a desk job, then your movement is very constricted and you don't have lymphatic flow or you don't have circulation, and there is, if you're working in front of the gadgets, then you have digitalized strain. So it's important we distribute these steps throughout the day so that we are active and our movement is taken care of.
Yeah, that pretty much answered my question. So, thank you so much. It's like a nice round number. So, I think it is easy and at the not too easy, but at the same time achievable. So, maybe that is why a lot of people have stuck to that number. So, how do activity trackers actually work? like the way we for example, heart rate, right? So it's mostly like we check the pulse, or we use a stethoscope. For example, doctors use stethoscope. But how do activity trackers actually work?
So we have different kinds of activity trackers today, but the most common ones we had have been the wrist wearables, right? So it could be watches or Fitbits, or it could or watches could be Apple, Garmin, or the upcoming Samsung watch or whatever. So all these devices have something called photoclatysmography. We always see the light blinking behind the watch.
Green light.
Yeah, green light. So we need a way to pick up the beats per minute, which we call it pulse. So this green light, where it's emitted, it's distributed from the skin into the blood. So blood is very smart. It picks up the green light, it absorbs, and as the fluid flows through the heart, it picks up our beats per minute, which is pulse. So that is how we get heart rate. But again, there is something called accelerometer, which will detect if we are sedentary, sitting, or we are active. That's how these watches have insights or trackers which will alert us, to keep standing every hour, right? We get these notifications. If you're sedentary for more than 1 hour, we get a notification. So this happened because we have accelerometer, then we have this photoplethysmography. So these are very important aspects of a tracker where the basic tracking biomarker will be the movement, which is activity, which is the number of steps that we are covering. Second is the heart rate. In the heart rate, there are two components, right? What is your dynamic active heart rate at that time? And the other one is resting heart rate. Resting heart rate, the lower it is, the better your cardiovascular fitness is. So that is another important metric. And the third metric would be heart rate variability. This is a little difficult or little challenging in getting from the wearable because not every wearable picks up heart rate variability. For that, we need to be wearing that wearable throughout day and night, which is 24 hours period, which is a challenge, right? Most of the wrist wearables, we don't wear them at night. And that is how we might miss resting heart rate while we are sleeping. So that's how we might miss heart rate variability while we are sleeping. So for these missing components, then later in the market, we have other things. So these are the at least basic stuff that we start out with when we say we are using wearables for monitoring our health.
That's very fascinating. So you mentioned sleep, right? So how is sleep quality measured?
There are different wearables for sleep. One, wrist wearable. Two, rings. So what it is that we see in this is the stages of sleep. One is light, then is deep, then is REM sleep. So it's important we finish at least 4 cycles of sleep in a night so that we get good recovery in the night. And it's also important how much time you're spending in the deep sleep part of your entire sleep cycle. It's important we have at least 50% of sleep in the deep cycle, which is impossible to tell without wearing a wearable. We think once we're on bed, we have closed our eyes and opened in the next morning, we think we were sleeping for 8 hours. But if you notice, if you start wearing the wearable, lot of things are different. The time your heart rate drops is different. The number of sleep cycles you complete is different. The how much time you spend in each stage of sleep is different. So that's how important it is to track sleep because the more part of it you spend in the deep sleep is more important. And the number of cycles you're finishing the sleep is important. The better your sleep quality is, the better your recovery is. That's how these devices come up with these methods, right? Like how recovered you are. So this is your sleep score. This is your recovery score. So based on how good your sleep was, some variables will give us the recovery insights or how well we are resilient to the stress. Have we recovered from the stress that was given to us? It could be exercise, for example. So that is the importance of the sleep. So the most favorite wearable for sleep would be ring, I would say, because the ring do not have a display. It do not distract your sleep so much. You can wear it for 24 hours. And the risk that we carry with long time wearing the wrist wearable would be that itchiness or irritation on the skin or redness while wearing it for 24 hours. So those are kind of taken care of when you wear a ring. And also the charge stays on for 5 to 6 days. So it's long lasting, it's durable, and it do not come as a disturbance in the sleep. So Yeah, that is the significance of sleep.
Wow, that's very interesting, Samatha. So you talked about deep sleep, right? So sometimes I've seen that deep sleep is either like 1 hour or 2 hours, or sometimes lesser than 1 hour, right? So how do you use these metrics in order to figure out from your wearable, in order to figure out, and what kind of steps can you take with these
So it's
metrics?
important to follow our sleep hygiene. It's important our resting heart rate drops very early on when we sleep. So for example, you're hitting the bed at 9. It's important our heart rate drops within first few hours, ideally within 3 hours. But the later your heart rate drops, that is impacting your sleep quality. So what are the factors that will not allow our heart rate to drop? Either you're eating very late in the night, or you're doing exercise too close to your bedtime. These two are the important variables. Or you're not having a restful sleep, like you've not taken your warm shower, or your room is too bright and you're sleeping. You're not maintaining hygiene, your bed is not cold. So it's important we follow a sleep hygiene where temperature is lower, so that our core body temperature also falls down. Only when your core body temperature falls down, you'll get into deep sleep. So warm showers do help. When we take a warm shower, our body internal core plasma will move towards the extremities, and that's how the core temperature falls. And the surface temperature, the blood vessels get dilated and will pull the temperature, bring down the core temperature. So it's important that we follow these steps so that when you're sleeping or going to bed, you're following a routine, have a hygiene to maintain, and you're
So,
eating very early. Yeah.
sorry. So warm shower and cold bed. Is that what you
Yes.
said? Okay.
Yes. Yes. And also don't have a very heavy meal close to your bedtime, because your body is busy digesting food and your entire circulation is busy digesting the food. So it's important you evacuate your stomach, and your body is actually resting then.
What do you think about keeping your phone close to you when you're sleeping, or checking your phone before you go to sleep?
Uh, it's important after, if your bedtime is 9 p.m., it's important 2 to 3 hours before that time we actually cool down, or give a hint to the body that we are winding down. But what is happening these days? We get out of the work, we go to home, and then we feel like relaxing. But for most of them, relaxing is watching a phone. Relaxing is watching entertainment content on the phone or on the gadget. But that is not actual relaxation. That blue light is actually making you more alert. You're more awakened. It's not allowing your melatonin to be released. It's not cooling down. Actually, it's working in reverse for you. So that way, we need to eliminate blue light closer to bedtime, number one. Number two, EMFs, electromagnetic forces, right? It's there in our room with n number of devices that we use, the internet cables that are hanging around. So I think it's important to keep phones away from us, even while we're charging, little away from us, and we don't keep consuming the content at least 1 to 2 hours before bedtime. For most of them, it might be impossible. So it's important we have some smart changes of the phone. We can always have those red color filter. It's a very small step, that right? We can use blue light blocking glasses, or we can use this red color filter, which is not very pleasing to watch. So after a while, we'll feel sleepy and we'll throw the phone away and we'll sleep. I think that is a very smart hack for me and for my friends. I usually advise. So these are the small steps I think all of us can take, like charging the phone away from the bed, changing the filter in your color filter in your phone, and things like that, and preserving more important tasks towards morning, first half of the day.
Yes. Yeah, that also helps me as well. Like I always have my phone on dark mode and the brightness is very low. So like, and it always helps that I keep my phone away when I'm sleeping in a separate room. That usually, gives that sort of distance that I don't really
Yes.
get into it first thing in the morning as well. And On that note, there is another metric, right? Blood oxygen level on fitness trackers. So, how does that work and how accurate is all this information?
Let me tell you, these devices are not gold standards. These devices are not for diagnosis. You cannot diagnose a situation, but it will give a hint towards where it is going. Like, for example, your respiratory rate is rising, your SpO2 is falling. That means it is hinting that your respiration, there's something wrong with it, or maybe you have sleep apnea, that you're not breathing sometimes in the night. These are the few hints that you get. This will allow you to meet your healthcare provider who will do a thorough testing later. But we can't treat these devices as medical grade devices, or these are not gold standard at all. But it will definitely allow us to track. If a person has apnea issues, we can allow him to track his SpO2, because whenever he has dips, he can intimate his clinician that he had n number of apneic episodes, or n number of times his SpO2 has crashed, things like that, which will allow the clinician to take more emergent action on him or her, and give necessary recommendation. So that way, it would definitely help. And there are different ways we use these trackers to assess our SpO2. Most of the time, it could be a fingertip, where we're placing it on our smartwatch. So what does it do? There are two kinds of lights that are emitting again for measuring SpO2. There is red light and there is infrared light. In the blood, we have oxygenated blood and deoxygenated blood. So whenever there is oxygenated blood, this blood will receive infrared light. And whenever there is deoxygenated blood, that will receive red light. So depending on this, we get a SpO2 value. That's how we would get. But how accurate are these devices? If you're resting, most of the time these devices are accurate. But if you're very active, these may not pick up more accurate values, and there could be a error of about 3 to 6. If it is a heart rate, there could be error of 3 to 6 beats per minute. And in SpO2, there could be an error of 5 to 6 points. So yes, it cannot diagnose, but it will help us, hint us, guide us to meet a physician to take action early.
Yeah, that's very interesting because even like Apple Watch, for example, it has sleep apnea detection now, and along with like ECG data, so which is all stored in the health app on the iPhone,
Yes.
which can they say that you can share this with the doctor so that they can actually arrive at a diagnosis or treatment process. So that is what you also mentioned, right? Like, so it can be useful. That data is useful in order to figure out, but then again, there needs to be other checks also involved in order to arrive at a conclusion.
Yes. As you were rightly mentioning about ECG, we have only one lead in our uh, wearables, right? But in hospitals, we use a medical grade 12 lead ECG. The only thing that we are able to monitor on our wearables is rhythm disturbances. You can identify a atrial fibrillation, but you can't identify anything else like myocardial infarction or ischemia, or where heart is not receiving enough blood supply. So it can't give you so many details like a 12 lead ECG does, but one important variable where a biomarker that it is giving is the rhythm disturbance. If a person is at risk and he's detecting a rhythm disturbance and he's sharing with his physician, then it will again help the physician to take necessary action to titrate their medicines, change his medicines, etc. So these are definitely aiding things for the
Okay.
clinic.
Yeah, yeah, it's quite fascinating. So, do you think there is an increase in patient engagement now because of wearable devices? Do patients adhere to treatment plans because of real-time feedback from these devices?
Definitely, I would say there is a change in behavior of the clients, because for any action to take or any adherence to new lifestyle changes or new drugs or new medicines, there needs to be a change in behavior in the client. So that change in behavior is little easy, but something is tracking them over time, and that could be a wearable sitting in their home. It can track and send information to their clinician. Behavior changes are the topmost, I would say, that makes people adhere to the advices given by the coaches or clinicians, number one. And number two, today's healthcare model is a very episodic model, right? Where we see a client, ask them to come after 6 months, 3 months, or 1 year, or many months. But chronic diseases do not come very episodically. They do not tell us and come. They can come throughout. So, a continuous care model is possible with wearables, I would say. A patient not visiting us between that 3 to 6 month period, but still monitoring something at home, notices a change, like notices his heart rate variability is continuously falling down despite the actionable things that he has done, then something is wrong. The clinician would advise him to get back. Or he's following the measures and his resting heart rate is always high. So there is something wrong that again will hint clinician to investigate the patient further. So since chronic diseases don't come in episodes, we need a continuous patient-centric healthcare model. And this is possible by these devices, and digital health, of course, makes it possible because they need not come to the hospital or the clinic to get the things checked. Today we have video calls, telehealth, which is making it possible. And slowly, I would say the conventional model where there was IP, right, inpatient, which is slowly moving to OP, which is outpatient. And now, which is moving, we are giving more um, onus to the client to take leadership or to become the CEO of their own health sitting at home. And this is becoming more possible because of these wearables and telehealth. But again, there are certain clauses where we don't recommend these devices to everybody.
What are those cases where you won't recommend these
Uh,
devices?
Top would be pregnancy because there are no studies and anything around it. So, pregnancy and people who have mental health problems like anxiety, ADHD, obsessive compulsive disorders, this is not a good idea to have them on the monitors because will only increase their anxiety and not help them. Third would be people who have this pacemakers, and they have this pacemakers, and there is something the if a heart rate tracker, for example, is deployed on them, it would interfere with the pacemaker.
Oh.
So any people who have implanted pacemakers are not a go-to people, and not teenagers also. These days we hear from mothers that we need to monitor the children use wearables, but I don't think that's a very good idea. It would disturb their behaviors. Yeah, only in special indications like type 1 diabetes, for example, a CGM can be used and monitored, but otherwise, this category is also not very best group to put the devices on. So pregnancy, childhood, teenagers, implanted pacemakers, people with OCD, ADHD, anxiety issues. So these people at the top, we don't advise them to go for all its wearables.
Yeah, that's very interesting because you get smartwatches for like 999 rupees now, and everyone seems to have one, even teenagers. So why do you not suggest teenagers to have wearables?
See, if they're using it for fashion, I don't mind because they just want to show off in their peers
Yeah, it's
that
a
they're
cool
more
thing. Yeah.
looking right. Well, still okay. But if a doctor is advising it for medical purposes, that is not very supportive. But again, if you look at these smartwatches, which are very little cheap, they don't have data privacy. There is no end-to-end encryption. Most of the time, the data is not reliable or accurate or consistent as well. And there could be data breaches. I think these are the things we need to look after whenever we are buying or putting a wearable on us. We need to be a little extra cautious. If you're deciding it should aid in your health journey, then we should go for a good product.
Absolutely. That is the problem that I have with cheap smartwatches as well. You don't really know how secure your health data is and how prone it is to hacking, or it's always better to go with a reputable manufacturer so that at least they have some reputation to upkeep. So they will make
Yes.
sure the devices are secure, basically.
Yes.
Uh,
Yes.
so actually, I had another question for you. So, how are wearables being used in clinical trials or medical research? Are they helping gather more long-term data than traditional methods?
Yes, definitely. Wearables are useful in collecting long-term data, um, especially in chronic disease management. For example, it could be monitoring obesity, weight loss, or diabetics using a continuous glucose monitor, or it could be tracking them for their activity or their heart rate variability using watches. Or so these are definitely useful while doing a study. But only thing again here is the adherence. But since it's a study and they are sufficiently, it is adjusted for their time that they spent on using this. Um, it is doable, and yes, it does give us a lot of data, longitudinal data. It will help us see if the intervention is actually helping them. Suppose if we are advising them to walk certain steps every day, we can't track it unless for a wearable. So it becomes impossible to track. It gives a very subjective opinion. And in studies, we should erase all kinds of those subjective variables. So henceforth, tracking devices that can track these changes are actually helpful,
Okay.
especially lifestyle changes when we are asking that to make.
Right. And you know that they are adhering to the suggestions that you have provided them, at least in some ways, from the steps perspective, uh, or sleep quality,
Yes.
right? So what do you think, which direction do you think wearables are going in? Do you think we will have more of these medical features on our activity trackers in the future?
There are about half a million health apps today, and there are over hundreds of watches and rings that are available. Most of them are used for general health purposes. Very few are available for performance enhancement and recovery. But now in longevity medicine, we see a lot of these wearables are coming into healthcare system integrations into EMR platforms so that the data is more HIPAA compliant, data is more privately encrypted so that the data is not lost out or you don't get those advertisement calls depending on your behavior. They sell you fitness products or supplements or the wellness programs. That wouldn't happen. But yes, seamlessly, I would say slowly wearables are making their way into the market and also into medical systems because slowly that line of demarcation between health and sickness is changing, right? It's blurring
Yes,
out.
yes.
So it's important we use wearables to achieve health and also to pick up predict any points of ill health. So we are moving towards that. Then it's always ideal to integrate these wearables into healthcare platforms, especially longevity physicians would agree with me across the world, because now we are making this access on EMR platforms more accessible to the wearables that the clients are wearing. Because if we see at blood data, blood biomarkers, they change only once a while. They change like once in 3 months, they change in once a month. But what about the changes that are happening in that 1 month? There are a lot of things that change in 1 month. There are a lot of things that change in a day. These data points are difficult to get from a blood test. So these data points are more accessible or more achievable through wearables. For example, a CGM. You're putting them on a diet or you're putting them on a drug or a medicine. To see the changes, you don't have to wait. Don't have to wait for 3 months to check for HbA1c. You don't have to wait for a month to check for fasting blood sugars. You can personalize the recommendations looking at just 1 day of CGM data, which is continuous glucose monitor. We are already doing it today. We can change that nutrition. So I think the way we are going today using these wearables is towards more predictive, more proactive, more personalized, more precision-based healthcare, I would say, and more patient-centric and more continuous care.
Yeah, because like sleep apnea detection and loss of pulse detection, so these require FDA approval, and devices now have these features which require FDA approval. So it is going in that direction. Perhaps maybe we will have more of these medical features on our devices. Okay, so What emerging trends do you see in wearables beyond fitness and wellness? Is it possible that continuous monitoring through wearables can be useful in conditions like heart disease or diabetes, like the ones that you mentioned? Uh, in terms of glucose monitoring, you said, right?
Yeah.
Will these
Yeah, yeah.
be also
Yeah.
something that will come into wearables?
Yes, a continuous glucose monitor, CGM, is also a wearable.
Okay. But it's a
With
separate wearable.
That's a separate wearable. Yes, it's not a worn on a wrist or a ring or on a finger. It's worn on the back side of your arm. So it will collect data of glucose from the interstitial fluid. Traditionally, we check for glucose either from the capillary blood or from the venous blood. But for a CGM to detect sugars, it will capture the information from the interstitial fluid. So this is very dynamic, right? Sugars are changing throughout the day, and you need to change the medication doses or nutrition or the food that they are taking should be very personalized. Same way for cardiac patients. I can give you an example of Indian-based a small monitor called Monitor is now available. For people who have rhythm disturbances, it would actually send a trigger on the phone or on their patient, on their clinician's phone, a trigger that a beat has been missed or there's a rhythm disturbance. So they don't have to wait for something bad to happen. They don't have to end up in a worse situation. At least it can be caught very early on so that we make necessary changes. And when we talk about these things, there are simple things in watches that we are missing out: fall detection, fall prediction, the stride that we are taking, the walking speed, the gait, because there are very certain important things that we need to know. For example, a very common disease, let's take Parkinson's disease in elderly, right? What is the feature? It has slowness in the movement. So when the phone picks up that in the last 6 months, your stride has fallen shorter, you're taking shorter, slower steps, this means something. For now, it's not giving the trigger, but if you observe that data and show that data to your clinician, he might be able to detect that there is something upcoming. Similarly, any fault detection can be captured. So then we can look into, is it a balance issue or is it an ortho issue? What issue is this? So these are also very important measures that we miss out, that we usually get on the watches. So in seniors, I would say in elderly population, these variables play a very important role in terms of gait, balance, the cardiovascular fitness, the heart rate variability, the resting heart rate, adhering to medicines, adhering to behaviors. So I think it's a very useful tool. That's why its integration into healthcare systems will be helpful to offer a very continuous care and detect the chronic events very early on.
Yeah, there seems to be a lot of advancements in healthcare and technology at the intersection of it. So it's very interesting for me to see that so many things are coming together in order to actually detect these diseases early on. So, on that note, do you think in the future wearables can be used for early detection of conditions like cancer or Alzheimer's?
We already have a um, mental health score for cognitive health assessment in the Apple phone today. Is a very basic mental health questionnaire taken in the doctor's office.
Hmm.
So we already have it existing. So we can ask our seniors at home, elderly population at home to keep filling that form every once in 6 months to track their progress and see the trends. So we have the cognition, which is already being built in. And sorry, there was another question from you.
Cancer. Cancer,
Cancer. We
yes.
are not there yet, but where we are at a stage of metabolomics where you identify certain proteins that are released into the blood even before a solid tumor is formed. By assessing certain important blood markers, we can see, okay, these proteins are arriving in the blood, something else is happening. So either the glycolysis has gone down and it is producing a byproduct. So metabolomics is advancing now for early cancer detection. We are not there yet with the cancer detection yet, but in future anything may happen. We already can We have voice detectors now. I think a lot of companies are working on addressing the voice and trying to attempt if the person is in depression and speaking in a certain tone. It can pick up the tone and identify
Oh,
the mood and the mental health disorder already.
wow, that is crazy. It's crazy how fast technology is improving, and it's able to actually predict and help humans in more meaningful ways. So, what kind of metrics can you track over a period of time on, say, an Apple Watch to see if you're more or less healthy?
Definitely a resting heart rate, then a heart rate variability, then SpO2, sleep metrics for sure to look into the various stages of the sleep and how we are spending, how is the sleep cycle. Um, and then step count just to adhere to the behaviors that we are moving throughout. Um, and the fifth one is the SpO2.
SpO2. Okay.
SpO2 and VO2 max. Well, for now, VO2 max is not a very right measure. That is not the gold standard measure to check. But it would give an indirect measure or looking into other metrics. I think these are the 5 to 6 metrics which are important that we can see long term, gather them together and see how we are progressing in terms of health. Keeping health aside, we can also see how our behavior is progressing.
Mhm.
Like, are we being more active or are we just adhering, we just sedentary throughout the
Mm,
day? How much screen time are we spending in certain other entertainment apps? So, behavior for sure. Other 5 to 6 health metrics that I said for sure
okay.
are really important.
So, what is VO2 max?
So, VO2 max is the maximum amount of oxygen that we inhale while doing an exercise. The top biomarker which can imply the best cardiovascular fitness in a person is VO2 max. The higher the VO2 max, the better. So today, at the age of 20 or 30, if you're starting at a very high VO2 max, at the age of 80, though it is lower, your all-round graph is above up other people. So today, at 20, 30, or 40, if you're a little higher compared to your peers, you'll be a little higher compared to your peers when you reach your 60s, 70s, or 80s. So it's important always to target your own VO2 max to be always higher, so you can pick up endurance activities to increase the cardiovascular fitness.
All right, Samatha, thank you so much for answering all my questions. It
Mhm.
was really fascinating to understand the intersection of health and technology. I learned a lot from this session. So, thank you everyone for listening to us, and I hope you received a lot of information from Samatha about health and how you can use your wearables on a daily basis and better understand your own metrics in order to lead a healthier life. So, thank
Thank
you,
you.
Samatha.